Why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon.
Neil Armstrong's one small step on the lunar surface in 1969 achieved a goal that sounded like science fiction just a few years earlier. It took 10 years for President JFK's dream of landing a man on the moon to become a reality. It all started after the Second World War, when the United States and the Soviet Union embarked on a bitter Cold War of espionage and propaganda. Space exploration and satellite technology fed the Cold War on both fronts. This included events like who could put the first manned spacecraft into orbit and who would be the first to walk on the moon. The space race was considered important because it showed the world which country had the best science, technology, and economic system. On October 4, 1957, the former USSR launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite to reach orbit successfully, and thus began the space race. By its military and economic implications, the impact of Sputnik was tremendous, caused fear, and sparked political debate in the United States. 4 months later, the U.S. managed to launch its first satellite, Explorer 1. On April 12, 1961, the Soviets returned to surprise the world by putting into orbit Yuri Gagarin, the first human being who entered outer space aboard the ship Vostok, driven by the A-1 rocket. This certainly left America worried that the Soviets would use this technology for military purposes. In May 1961, President Kennedy proposed before the Congress the need for man before the end of the century to reach the moon and return safely to Earth, thus the start of the space programs Mercury and Gemini. From the conjunction of both emerges Project Apollo. Apollo 11 became the first manned mission to land on the moon. The arrival of the man to the moon is one of the most important events in the history of mankind, neither more nor less than the conquest of space.
The Apollo 11 crew on board was Neil Armstrong, the commander, Michael Collins, the command module pilot, and Edwin E. Aldrin Jr., the lunar module pilot. After traveling 240,000 miles in 76 hours, Apollo 11 entered into a lunar orbit on July 19th. Armstrong became the first human to walk on the moon's surface, with his first words being, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The event was broadcast to a global audience of around 600 million people. President Nixon made what has been termed the most historic long-distance phone call ever made from the White House when he called to congratulate them. The crew spent a total of 2.5 hours on the moon's surface, performed a variety of experiments, and collected soil and rock samples to return to Earth. Many items were left on the surface of the moon as a reminder of America's great accomplishment, and among those were an American flag and a plaque that read, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon." Before any celebrations could begin, the triumphant Apollo 11 astronauts' return from the moon wasn't a simple matter of splashing down. Back then, the moon was still unknown enough that the scientists at NASA were worried that the moon germs might infect and wipe out the human race. For this reason, the Apollo 11 astronauts had to be restrained to a 3-week quarantine before any celebrations began. The flight of Apollo 11 met with an ecstatic reaction around the globe as everyone shared in the success of the astronauts. The front pages of newspapers everywhere suggested how strong the enthusiasm was. NASA estimated that because of the nearly worldwide radio and television coverage, more than half the population of the planet was aware of the events of Apollo 11. A state dinner was also held in Los Angeles, where the astronauts were awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by U.S. President Richard Nixon. Little did the first men to walk on Earth's only satellite know that perhaps the most exhausting part of their historic journey lay ahead. They were to embark on the giant step Apollo 11 Presidential Goodwill Tour, visiting 24 countries over 45 days. Instead of looking down on the Earth from outer space, they were jetting across it. President Richard M. Nixon promoted the tour with the official purpose to exchange information gained from the flight with other nations and to share plans for future space exploration.
It wasn't until after Apollo 11 landed on the moon that NASA started thinking seriously about giving astronauts some sort of surface mobility system, a vehicle that would allow them to cover more ground during their brief sojourns on the lunar surface. In early 1970, the Space Agency awarded Boeing a contract to develop and build such a system. The company delivered the first flight-ready lunar rover to NASA in 1971. This rover flew on Apollo 15, and while taking a car to the moon might seem insane, the rover's simple and elegant design made it a worthwhile addition to the final 3 Apollo missions. This greatly expanded the range of the lunar explorers. Previous teams of astronauts were restricted to short walking distances around the landing site due to bulky spacesuit equipment required to sustain life in the lunar environment. On the first 3 lunar landing missions, Apollo 11, 12, and 14, astronauts covered a total combined distance of 4.4 miles. With the rover, Apollo 15 alone more than tripled that distance, covering a total of 17 miles. Much of the lunar material gathered during the Apollo missions was shared with foreign scientists, including Russians. In fact, some of it was in exchange for material returned from the unmanned Russian Luna series. The rock and soil samples are now under study by 15 countries and European Space Research Organization, and its study continues to yield useful information about the early history of the Moon, the Earth, and the inner solar system. The Apollo program and pictures of the whole Earth that it gave to the world forever changed our view of the universe and ourselves. It is no accident that the first Earth Day took place less than a year after Apollo 11. The Apollo missions not only helped the U.S. win the space race, it also provided the much-needed technological boost that has changed the course of human history in far more profound ways than anyone could have predicted. Using computers with less power than we have now in our cell phones, 3 men maneuvered their way across 240,000 miles of free space and managed not only to land on the moon, but also to take off again and return home.
The success of Apollo 11 has opened new fields of exploration and research that has led to a greater understanding of our planet and provided new insights into the origin and history of the solar system. The Apollo 11 mission was only the beginning. However, the subsequent missions included more comprehensive observations and measurements at a variety of lunar sites. As progress in human spaceflight accelerated through the 60s, PhD intake at American universities, particularly in the field of physics, increased almost 3-fold. Apollo was making America smarter. Over the next several years, space scientists continued to visit and study the moon, learning about its composition, age, and rocks, and about the similarities between the moon and Earth. Extensive testing found no evidence for life, past or present, on the moon. NASA's Office of Technology Transfer and Commercialization licenses space-age technologies and connects with the private sector using business-to-business partnerships. With over 1,800 recorded NASA spin-offs, NASA technologies influence our lives in a variety of ways, making us safer, healthier, and more efficient. Spin-offs have occurred in every market: information technology, consumer goods, energy and environment, health and medicine, industrial productivity, public safety, and transportation. NASA's missions, programs, and projects are ensuring the United States will remain the world leader in space exploration and scientific discovery for years to come, while making critical advances in aerospace, technology development, and aeronautics. NASA is designing and building capabilities to send humans farther into the solar system than ever before, including to an asteroid and Mars. Author and astronomer Carl Sagan said, "Something in us recognizes the cosmos as home. We are made of stellar ash. Our origin and evolution have been tied to distant cosmic events. The exploration of the cosmos is a voyage of self-discovery." The future of space exploration will continue to transform. Man will continue to explore and bring his torch to the billions and billions of stars and galaxies beyond our current perception, deep within the darkness of the cosmos.